All right, sorry about that. It seems like we got disconnected. So, here we are again. So, we were talking about proportions right now, but got disconnected, so. Yeah. I was listening to music, but I'm noticing a pattern here. Whenever I actually do put music on, it seems like people just tune in and out really bad. WB? What's WB? What's that? We back? Guess who's back? Back again. Rod is back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? 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 Boo boo. All right, let's see. What? Welcome back. Oh, see, I'm not familiar with lingo nowadays. I'm realizing that I'm old, right? I'm realizing that I'm getting old. I'm getting to the point where kids say things I just do not comprehend, and it's just like, wow, I never thought that I would be that person, but I'm that person now. I'm that person, and it's just kind of silly. So, what should we learn today? We've had like a bunch of lessons already today, but I feel you. I'm 18 and I never know what anyone means, though. Even you at 18? Oh man, that sucks. Like, said we were working on redesigning Sailor Moon for this modern day. So I got to work on that on my own time. But right now I just feel like drawing with people, and like I said, since I don't have a community of people that I can go to and draw with, right? Like I can't pick up the phone and be like, "Oh, I'm going to be able to draw with someone today." No, I don't have that. Right? So I aim to do that for other people here so that you guys have somebody to draw with. I love having people in my community. I love people talking. I love you guys engaging, right? So if you guys, want to talk, if you guys want to chill, great. That's fantastic. If you guys don't want to do anything, you guys just want to chill here and like bring your sketchbooks and draw with us and just comment once in a while, hey, do that too. That's really cool. Like, we don't always all have to be doing the same thing. But I do love my community and I love the people in it. And it's really, really cool to see how you guys progress. Like, honestly, it's been so cool to see how much some of the people that follow me have progressed over the last like year. And whenever they do show me, it's like, wow, that's so cool. So, what's up, guys? How are you? Okay, I'm finally gonna look at the chat, okay? I'm gonna be looking at the chat today. I'm gonna be like aiming to connect with you guys a little bit more. Haven't done art at all due to depression, but watching your lives have actually inspired me. Oh, well, I just got out of a really bad spout of depression too. And like, it's not an easy thing, and it's not something that like anybody can just scruff off. So if you're getting through it and you're feeling better, hey, you're amazing. You're doing great. Hi, Kocho. Your art and anatomy tuts have helped me so much. Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you. Like knowing that, it's like it makes me so happy to just like Know that I'm helping people. Your doodles are awesome. I love the hands. Yeah, hands are fun. Hands are really fun to draw once you like get used to drawing them, because like once you realize that the hand is not necessarily like that super like, it doesn't have to be a shape, right? Hands are fluid. Hands are like super fluid. They can like be in any way, shape, or form and still look proper. As long as you understand where things are supposed to connect, you can draw hands from any shape, any angle, and they will look good, right? It's not about understanding how to draw like the fingernails or anything. It's just about understanding these basic shapes that you have in here, right? If you understand how your fingers work, right, you can draw your knuckles going in a bunch of different ways, right? And it will still look proper when you put it in connection with each other, because it's just going to look like a hand that's doing something weird, but everything ends up looking like a hand still, as long as you keep things in their place. So the basic structure is middle finger connects to the wrist, right? And that gives you your top or your bottom of your hand. So this could be a top, this could be a bottom. Let's try it different, okay? Then this could be left or right. So it can be left or right, either one. So to the right, or to your thumb side, you're going to have one knuckle. To your thumb side, you're going to have one knuckle, right? So you have your thumb right here. And the thumb doesn't have to be perfect either. I'm going to show you guys the 3 parts of the thumb. And then to the other side of your middle knuckle, you're going to have 2 fingers. Okay? So that's the knuckle. You're drawing the knuckle. You're actually drawing the anatomical structure of your knuckle, right? That is what you're drawing. You're drawing this, right? Your bone and your everything around it wraps around your bone. You're drawing your knuckle, the very big part that sticks out, right? That is what you're drawing. That is what you're referencing. For the top, you can just draw your fingers and then back into your wrist, right? You're going to have like a little webbing in between your fingers, and that's essentially the top. From the bottom, you do the same thing, but you're going to have 2 extra elements. You're going to have your pinky padding, and you're going to have your thumb padding. Normally, you see another padding right here at the top, right? Like that's normally something you see. Well, you already drew that. That's the knuckles. So you already drew that. That's already there. Right? So that little indentation is already there. Cool. Because your knuckles are inside your palm. Your knuckles are inside of your palm. They're not outside of your palm. They're inside your palm. And they rotate accordingly there. Right? Your palm doesn't have a finger that rotates out here. Your fingers rotate from here to here, creating creases. If you have another part of your finger and you bend it, you create a crease. Your finger is divided into 3 sections. Right? The sections are divided as follows. The knuckle that you drew for your hand, up until the first section, your first section, this, from your palm, remember your palm is inside, your knuckle's inside your palm. Draw a thumb just for fun. Okay. The first section of your finger is consisting of your knuckle, the bottom of your knuckle, to your first knuckle. That same distance is going to be the next 2 segments combined. Knuckle, first segment, dun, 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 next 2 segments combined. If you take it from here, obviously that's a weird measurement, that's a quarter or whatever. But if you take it from where it rotates, where it actually rotates, which is the back of your knuckle, right? Right here, it rotates from the top. It doesn't quite go up, so the pivot point must be up there, right? Your pivot point for your fingers is at the top of your knuckle, right? It's always at the top. So whenever you pivot something, it's going to pivot from that top point because your finger has a limiter. It doesn't go past that point, right? So it has to be from the top. When you rotate things in space, now you have the ability to understand that that's the top of your finger. So now you have the ability to rotate your finger in a lot of different ways. So once you have your hand, you have your middle knuckle, right? Now this finger has a top because you have your pivot point right there. So that pivot point can divide the thing in two. If you want to make it a simple hand, you can divide it into three because this section is the same as these two combined, right? And then you can start bending your finger if you want, doing anything you want to it, right? Your fingers go in different directions, so each one is going to have its own middle point. And as you guys can see, it becomes a lot easier to draw your shape when you know that it pivots from the top. Connects back to your wrist. It's just an easier way to see it. I've been working on hands in spare time, but you make it look easy, but it's so tedious. It is tedious. And you know what? It's gonna be boring, and it's gonna be annoying, and it's gonna be tough, and you're not gonna get it all the time, and it's not always going to make sense. And not all the drawings you do are gonna have amazing hands, and sometimes it's gonna be difficult. But you know what? Also, the more that you understand this stuff, the easier it is to be able to stylize it and be able to learn better. So if you're in essence trying to just be a better artist, it's going to be a way that's going to help you conceive better drawings. If you see it as a challenge, if you see it as tedious and annoying, then you're going to always have a negative connotation to it, and you're never going to actually improve very much, right? And this is not me calling you out. This is not me trying to be an asshole or anything. This is me just literally telling you how things are. Like if you, in anything in your life, if you find yourself thinking, oh, I can't do this. Oh, it's so annoying. Oh, it's so bad. Like whatever type of thing you say is what you're going to manifest. So if you manifest a really shitty version of yourself, you're going to manifest that. If you tell yourself, oh, I can't do this, well, guess what? You're going to make that happen because you believe it. So if you believe that you can do something, it's more likely that you will do it. Like I said, you can have your hands being in any direction you want, in any shape and style that you feel like, just by simply learning. And I'm drawing complicated hand shapes just so you guys see how easy it is to be able to take that concept. But most of the time, you're not going to be doing hands that are so complex, right? So you're going to be doing like simple poses, like poses that are meant to just like conceive like that a hand is there, but not necessarily distract people from the rest of your design, right? Most of the time, you're just going to be drawing hands like this. So even easy hands can be expressive if you understand where things are supposed to come from, right? You don't have to be relegated to just drawing that same hand that you draw. Practice different ones by just changing the size of your fingers, the way the fingers curve in, the way the fingers move, the way the thumb connects. But at least you have that basic knowledge of finding that middle finger that just helps out so much with the mapping, right? Especially when the hand is curved. Ooh, when the hand is curved, that's a pain in the butt sometimes. But I have my middle finger. I have my thumb side. So to my thumb, I'm going to have one more finger. So now I have these two. And then I have two more, but they're going to be blocked somewhat. So I just got to show that they're there. Ta-da! That's why I like to lift the pinky. And then you have your simple pose in your curved hand shape. So stop seeing your hand as a flat box, right? Because that's going to give you all the same hands. Start seeing your hand as more fluid. Start seeing your hand as something that you can mold, that you can express, kind of like a mouth or like an eyebrow, right? And then using those mapping points by finding out a simple point where your knuckle is, you can identify the top and the bottom of your hand, right? Because your knuckle is the width of your hand. So the top and the bottom of my hand are indicative of that little shape too. And then if I just draw similar size knuckles, I have my padding for the underneath. Half of it is about my thumb. And then you can just start drawing your fingers going in whatever perspective you feel like. See what I mean? So yeah, so that is essentially the concept behind hands. Like the knuckle is such an important part of the hand that it's always forgotten, right? Like nobody really understands how important it is to find correlating points in the body. Kind of like with the collarbone, right? Like to me, the collarbone is a very important part of the body now, and because it connects everything. Like the collarbone connects your shoulders, connects your pectorals, connects your neck to your ears, connects the head to the rest of the body. Like that has such a strong connection point. So that is a very important section, and it also determines the middle of your rib cage. So if you start with a simple point in your rib cage, you can dictate everything from here, right? If I want my shoulder this way, I can draw my shoulder this way. If I want my shoulder this way, if I want to create like downward perspective, I can do that by just switching the angle in which I draw my neck and stuff like that, right? It's just a matter of seeing how far you can take that one point, reference point, and then playing around with it. And seeing how all the other parts move whenever you move it. And then just little by little doing so and just actively paying attention to where things pivot from, right? This arms pivot from the top of your shoulder. Your elbow pivots from the outside of your arm, right? So when you're pivoting, you're not pivoting from the center, you're pivoting from the side. So you're always going to pivot around that one thing. That's why overlaps happen. Okay? So learning the pivots of your, like body parts is important. With your leg as well, right? You have your leg. And we have a foot. Let's say a foot right here. So the pivoting point for our legs are two. One is up here, right? And that's from your hip bone area. And that's where the initial part of your hips rotate. So you have to keep that pivoting point if you rotate your legs in any direction that you feel like rotating. Okay? That is essentially the pivot point for the thigh, is the upper part of the leg. For the knees, it's going to be the front of the leg. It pivots because your bone and your shin is right there. So it pivots from here. So whenever you are bending your leg, pivot it from there, and it's going to give you the desired distance that you want, or the desired shape that you want. This overlapping shape, when it gets like this, it changes a little bit, but that's for another lesson for another day. Your calf muscle wraps around that bone, right? And then your foot pivots around the front of your foot. It pivots around the front point because that's roughly the limiter for your leg. So learning the pivot points for objects is very important. Learn where things go before you try to learn how to draw them. How to draw them. And what I mean by that is like you don't need to understand to practice these things, right? You don't need to know how to draw a perfect rib cage with chest muscles and abs and hip bones and everything. No, you don't need to do all that, right? You don't need to know all that. First of all, you probably don't know where to place all those muscles in the first place. So start off with understanding where to place a couple things. The midline for your rib cage for the front and the back. Focus on either finding your collarbone or the middle of your rib cage. Those 2 points indicate the midpoint, the angle in which you're turning your head. That is such an those 2 angles, those 2 little things can change the perspective of a drawing really, really quickly, right? It could be a front, it could be the back. You can draw things really, really quickly like that. So keep those 2 elements in mind. So learn how to put your collarbone and how to put this little divot of your rib cage in. After that, learn where your arms connect. Your arms connect underneath the collarbone. They literally connect on your rib cage underneath your collarbone. Your arm will pivot from the top. So wherever you rotate your arm, pivot it from that point. Okay? Collarbone, arm. That is where you pivot your arm from. So the arm comes from here. The legs are connected to your hip bones. Your hip bone is essentially a noodle with 2 little circles pointing forward. Right? That is the shape that you should be considering. Consider it underwear, consider it consider it a thong, consider it whatever you want, right? But consider this angle because you need these circles cut out of your hip bone shape. That is where your legs come from. Your legs pivot from the top. See a similar situation here? Right? Actually, they pivot from in here, but you can consider it from that point. Your leg comes out. From that point, connects from the top of the hip to the bottom of the hip, leaving space for your junk. Right? The other one comes out from there, giving you the space in between. When you understand how your muscles work, now then you'll be able to add like the little booty and like little like overlapping shapes. But you don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about that. Learn how to connect the leg first. Right? Instead of thinking about like muscles and everything, just learn how to connect the leg to the right place. Do noodles until it looks good. Just do noodles. Don't even do like legs. Just do noodles that bend in 2 parts. Okay? Once you learn how to connect this, then you can move on to something more akin of legs. You can start going with like some hip bones and overlapping them a little bit and maybe creating like more, seductive poses, or you can go with more muscles and after that. But learn where it connects first because that is more important. Understanding how it connects from the side, right? How it connects from the front. How it connects from the back. The back is complicated because these are facing forward, right? So we're only seeing the back of these. And you also have the other thing where you have booty. So the butt, this is not giving you an indication of your muscles. This is only indicating where the bone structure is. So if you have a butt, you have to add that shape on top of that, right? Kind of like you would add a bicep to an arm, right? You have an arm and you want it to be like buff, you would add a muscle there. Well, the same thing for your back. You have your hip bones. Now you got to add that muscle on your hip bones. So whenever you're drawing characters like girls with big booties or whatever, you're going to draw your hip bones. And then when you're drawing your legs, you can add the butt after. And then you have the booty that you want for your characters. Okay? So that is how you approach drawing legs. So, like, again, understanding anatomy is going to take you to the next stage. Understanding perspective is going to make you understand it, period. Right? So you can't really, it took a long time to understand muscles and make them work before I understood how to draw in perspective properly. Right? Without the ability to learn how to draw a sphere and cut out the shapes on the side and draw through, I just would never be able to draw legs properly. Like I would not know like how to connect my legs properly without constantly like overthinking myself and like thinking myself into a stupor and like hard positions, like I don't know, like walking poses or whatever, right? It was hard for me to understand this concept because I didn't understand how perspective worked, right? So I didn't see these angles. I couldn't see these angles. Drawing things that were different legs, like different shapes, was complicated for me. So a lot of the times I would end up drawing my legs like this. And I have a feeling a lot of you guys are going to feel attacked or mentioned right now. But just drawing your legs flat like this tends to be a sign of a person not understanding how to position things in perspective. So if you're doing that, that's probably what I'm seeing. But something as simple as this can be changed by just changing a simple line, right? Just making something not go in the same direction is enough to make it look indicative of depth. You don't have to change both of them. You don't have to make like a very dynamic pose. And if you want to just keep your pose nice and simple, it's cool to start off like that since you're comfortable doing it like that. But then just make one leg a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. And then just by doing that, you have created a bunch of depth. Right? So that is essentially what you have to aim for when it comes down to drawing ankles, legs, feet. It's not about learning how to draw the actual thing perfectly. Like I don't even think I can probably draw like a realistic toe if I tried. I've drawn so many cartoons in my life. Right? So it's not about learning how to draw every single bone structure that's going to lead you to draw like the shapes that you want. One long nail. It's going to be more so learning how things connect, like your toes, how they connect to the rest of your body, and then learning how those basic shapes turn into your toes. Right? How do you take that basic knowledge that you've already accumulated from learning all those basic shapes, and how do we turn that into the things that we need? How do we take these, see things into a different level of understanding? Like sometimes we run out of things to draw, right? Like we are drawing, let's say, a face, and it gets to the point where you're like, oh, you're drawing and you're like, okay, so I had like cool shadows and eyelashes, and I've drawn like every single muscle fiber that I can possibly think of. And like, how do I take this to the next level? How do I get this to the next like part? Like, how do I make this more realistic? How do I make this more like cartoony? How do I do this? If you're wondering how you take something to the next step, it's due through understanding, right? You have to understand the object inside and out in order to be able to modify it. So if you're looking for more realism and you don't know where to add shadows anymore or how to make it look more realistic, then you have to look at the differences between form shadows and cast shadows and highlights and why they happen, right? And how lighting works in general is going to be very contrasty. Like, you got to look at different things like black and white contrast between your backgrounds and your colors. You might have to go into color theory to understand how, like shades of blue and lighting affect color, skin, and then go into levels of detail that include learning how pores work, freckles, and even hairs that stick out from the body. Right? So it takes a lot of understanding. It doesn't just take knowing how to draw a little part of the body better. It takes a lot of understanding of a bunch of different concepts to be able to level yourself up. So if you haven't figured it out, I don't blame you. It's not easy. It's not easy to just jump in there and be like, oh, I want to be better at this. Okay, magically do it just because you do the artwork more. No, it doesn't work like that. Just because you focus on drawing more doesn't mean you're going to get better. Right? What's going to make you better is drawing more, but having the intention, draw with the intent to learn. And that is my number one rule. If you are going to be drawing in your sketchbook, why not make it enjoyable for yourself and actually draw with the intent to learn something, right? If you're going to just be drawing in your sketchbook for a couple hours, why not give yourself a little lesson to try to learn? Make it interesting for yourself, right? Make it so that you have to find the answer within Pinterest or Instagram or, videos like this, right? Give yourself a reason to draw. Give yourself for a reason to level yourself up. It's going to just be something that's going to help you, and have that mentality is going to be really, really good for you down the line, right? So always have the intent to learn something. So when your family find them, they will accept them crazy. What? So let's move on. Okay, let's go back to legs. Leggies can be mapped out in so many different ways. Like, essentially every representation that I've seen that actually works tends to be based on something akin of this shape, right? Some people just draw V's, right? They don't even worry about anything. I like the noodle idea, right? I just like this idea because it gives me a perspective point for the top if I want it. So if I want to take this thing, but I don't want it facing down, I can just change the perspective and now the legs are pointing up, right? Like, it's just a very simple concept that is, good for me at least to be able to see things in a certain way. So for me, that makes sense. For some people, some other ways will make sense. Some other people will start with like a line, right? Some people can do that and like they can visualize it like that. Some people need that actual volume and they need to sculpt out their shapes, right? So they need to actually like dig into it and start seeing the shapes and then start cutting into them and seeing how they can mold their character based on that. It's not as clean. It's not as like precise. Like, no, just not as, it's as precise, but just not as clean as the other way of seeing it. You know, some people just require more sketch lines. Some people like to create flow, right? They want to make sure that everything they do has flow, so they draw with flow. And it's not a bad way to go about it. It's just a different way to approach it. If you understand where things connect, again, it doesn't become really hard to make, you know, body poses out of any lines you draw. It's kind of like you can make a face out of anything you draw, right? Like I can draw that, and then I can probably make a decent face out of this. Let's see. Which way do we want to go? Yeah. Right. You can make something out of anything as long as you understand where things are supposed to go. So with legs, it's going to get to the point where instead of you thinking, okay, it's going to be like two teardrop shapes connected to your hip bones. This is going to be how you practice initially, right? This is how, and we know that it pivots from your knee. So any of these other shapes that we draw is going to pivot from my knee. So if it's going to go back into the distance, it's going to pivot from my knee. Right? If it's going to go back this way, it's going to pivot from my knee. If it's going to go this way, it's going to pivot from my knee. Okay? Any way that my leg goes, unless it's broken and straight up going to the side, and that still kind of looks right. Like a dance or something, like whee, right? If it pivots from the right place, it's going to look a lot more natural. So, leggies, first part of the leg, not basing anything into consideration, can be any shape we want, any shape we want. Give myself a knee, a pivot for my knee, so my pivot to my pivot, right? And then from here, let's make it go down this way into perspective. Well, let's draw some shape going small. So I know that this is my knee, so that has to be my pivot point. So this is going to be where it goes from this way to this way. And then, I don't know, give it clothing or whatever. But you already know where all these things are overlapping. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to add elements like clothes and pivot point to pivot point, and understanding that that's the top of my leg. It just makes things a lot easier, in my opinion. Right? If I want to add really baggy clothing to this, I just build on top of my structure. Right? So at that point, it's just a matter of whatever you want to do. Like your skirts and stuff like that would wrap around your legs, and they would drop if there was like gravity or something like that you're sitting on. So they would wrap around. Again, hip bones, right? Rib cage. So if you have your legs and your legs have volume, right? So anything that wraps around your body like a dress would also be affected by these lumpy parts of your body. Right? So your skirts would have like little dents like that. Maybe you would see a little bit of your hip. Maybe you would see a little bit of this upper leg. But again, it's just going around your body. This is just like if I gave a skirt to a sphere, it would just look like a cone wrapping around it, right? You're doing the same thing here, but you're adding extra bumps. So instead of it being a sphere that's flat, it's a sphere with little bumpies. So whenever you are wrapping your bottom circle around them, it would have little bumpies, right? So essentially you go and you like build up the knowledge from this very slowly, adding different parts, and then it just clicks. Like, it's really silly. Like, you'll be one day you'll be drawing these exercises, and then you'll be like, oh cool, that's an eye. And then you'll never see eyes as the same again. You'll be drawing a head, you'll be looking at a head from above, and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is an eye with this on top. Huh, cool. Oh, and the nose. Oh, the nose, again, it's just looking up. So I can draw everything as a sphere if I want to at that point, if that's the shape that works for me. And I can draw that as a sphere. I can draw the mouth as a sphere as well, because the mouth is essentially just like an eyeball. Right? With negative space instead of an eye. And then just like that, by knowing just the perspective of a sphere, you're able to draw something in a difficult pose. Right? But applying your knowledge that you generate by doing all these exercises and practicing is what's going to give you the ability to draw things in perspective any way you want. If eyes are hard in a certain angle, I don't know why it would be so hard. It's just a sphere with a different hemisphere. Instead of it being like that, now it's like that. Right? These two eyes have no difference in hardness of drawing. Only this one's angled and this one's not. That's the only difference. It's a sphere that's angled. So if you are having issues drawing angled eyes, like if you're drawing your characters and you don't know how to draw, let's say, the other eye right here, right? Everybody has an issue drawing the second eye. One eye is going up, one eye is going up, right? This one, it's going around the eye, creating that eyelash. This one's going around the eye, creating that eyelash. Only this one's probably going to be blocked a little bit by a nose, like by a nose. It's just a basic shape. You're only seeing it from a slightly different angle, a slightly different perspective, but it's the same eye. You can map out the points, top and bottom angles, and then draw those for your hemispheres. And then you can do that. Right? So that is essentially just a basic issue of perspective and not understanding your basic shapes or not applying the concept of your basic shapes to your perspective. Like, that is something that happens a lot. Like, we just like to think that we do it. We like to think that we apply what we know, but we never do. We never really do. Like, we just keep drawing stylized stuff. And then we just realize later on in life, when it's hard for us to move something, that we never really practice our foundational skills. Right? Like, an eye in itself is incredibly simple to draw. It's just a sphere with a hemisphere being darker than the others to represent their eyelids. And you can draw that in any direction you want, making it an incredibly simple concept to grasp. Right? This basic concept of an eye, though, is such a hard thing normally to grasp by somebody until they start visualizing things as 3D objects. Until they actually realize that a sphere can be manipulated in any way you want. That is when, once you realize that, it unlocks a lot of things for you. Right? It unlocks the face, it unlocks the eyes, it tends to unlock the head. Like, once you start realizing where the ears go and stuff like that, it makes the jaws a little bit easier to draw. Drawing a difficult angles like looking up, looking down become a lot easier when you understand how perspective works and how to move things around. Right? Once you see the ability to draw through your shape. You can draw front and back views of your characters without worrying too much, because it's not going to be so hard for you to be able to map them out looking the other way, right? It's just not going to be hard for you. This is the reason why so many teachers teach you the concept of perspective. But the thing is, a lot of them fail to realize to explain it in a way that makes it important to people that don't want to do buildings or architecture, right? Like, instead of explaining it in a way that there's your horizon line and here's your sphere, and you go like this, and that's how you make cylinders, and you put a box and you connect the lines. Well, that is a way to learn it. And that's good. Like, that actually works. Like, if you understand this and you're able to apply that to like a normal, structure, it's really cool. Like, that is nothing's going to take away from the fact that that is a given and true way to draw something into perspective, right? That's like literally the way that it's been taught most of the time for most people and most things. But the problem with drawing things like characters based on a perspective plane is the fact that you end up with really boxy characters, right? You end up always going back to that horizon line. So you always end up with characters that are looking the same way all the time, right? And they might have like the perspective that you need, but it's always going to be a relatively like standard pose. Like, whenever I find myself going to the same perspective point, it was always really bad for me. And it got to the point where I was like, well, why am I doing that? Why not just draw my body, right? And then after this, I can figure out where my vanishing point is. Like, after I draw him, I can start figuring out the rest of it. To figure out like all the angles for all the proportional parts, then I can go in and do that. But to me, this is a much easier approach to figuring out the perspective for a scene or for the actual features of a character than doing it like this. Finding them through a vanishing point was really hard, but finding my main core situational things that I'm going to have in my design and then basing my perspective based on that was much, much more like solid for me. And that made it click. Okay, so focus more on learning your shapes. If you don't know the simple trick to learning how to divide something in half, it's incredibly simple. And this is more of an architecture type of like way to learn how to draw the middle part of something. But it works really well, right? Find the middle. So finding the middle of an actual section of your body tends to be a little bit hard sometimes. But if you go and you measure from each one of the endpoints, split it in half, whatever this connection point is, that's the middle. So that is how you find the middle for things. Let's say you have another building that's going into the distance, right? Cool. You want to find the middle of this. Boom, boom, boom. Right? If you can go infinitely into perspective by doing that. Now, if I wanted to divide this guy again in fourth, like into half, then I just consider this a completely different section. Split it in half, and then I have another section to divide. If you do this here, boom, 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 you're going to have perfect perspective every time. Right? So this is how you subdivide a box. Why is it important to subdivide a box? Well, because just learning how to subdivide a box is going to be a very cool skill, and I'm going to teach you how to draw faces by doing how to do this. Okay, So I didn't have a vanishing point. I didn't have a perspective plane. I didn't have any of that, right? And I still came up with very good, solid perspective. So how do we use this? So let's draw a head. I'm going to do the same thing I did to this box, right? My shapes are a little bit rounder, but they're still the same concept. The front of my face needs a middle, so I'm going to need, this is the side of my face, and this is the front of my face. This part needs a middle, so I'm gonna take those 4 points. Imagine this is a box, and my face middle is right here, right? By simply doing that, now I have my front of my face, and I can start playing around with my middle line. The next step, I'm going to divide this side into 3s. Ooh, into 3s. So, super easy. Like, if it's not something that's going to go into perspective a lot, in this case it's not, just divide it into 3s on the top, divide it into 3s on the bottom, and connect the lines. Right? Even parts. And if this one's going a little more in perspective, but it's still relatively close when it comes down to the actual spacing. This rule is very important when you have things that are heavily into perspective, right? Something that's super heavily marked is going to be a little harder to figure out the middle. But that is how you figure it out. But it's really helpful when it comes down to finding the middle point of your face. So now that we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have 1, 2 in the front, now you start seeing the benefit of this. You can make a whole face just by knowing that. If this is my middle line, this is where my nose is going to come out from. This is where my lips are going to come out up. And this is where my chin is going to be. I just got to give it depth to both sides. Okay. So by knowing the rule, just by doing this, you can do all these faces. Any face you want, just by knowing that rule of thirds. Right? There's no rule that has to keep your face to a certain constraint. And then when you start turning it into a 3/4 point, this is where it really shines, right? It starts taking your designs and making you able to see those lines, those measurements, into a different side. So, understanding your basic perspective, in this case, gives you access to being able to see your head a little bit better. Now, you don't always have to stay in the shape of a box, but you can take that same concept and apply it. If I want the half of a circle, by splitting it, you can figure it out, right? The problem is that if it's a circle, it's always going to be directly in the middle. So you have to consider this a box with edges if you want to get the angles to split them in half. So you kind of have to like ghost it, find that middle point, and then go around your shape with that middle point, right? You find the middle point by going around your shape like a ghost, finding your middle point, and then that has to curve around your shape. It doesn't just go up and down. It has to curve around your shape because that's a round object. Same thing here. You can consider angle, angle. And just like that, you subdivide a sphere multiple times without understanding anything other than just splitting a box in half. So when you're doing that, you can do the same thing. Split that into 3s, and this one into 2s, and then draw your face based on that. Okay? Now, the other way this makes a lot of sense is that when you start dividing your box into fourths, so if you are getting to the point where you can divide up to this point, right? That's everything you need for a face. Everything comes within these shapes. Dividing something, the side of the face, if you divide it into 3, if you divide the front of the face into 2, and then divide the height of your head into 3, you end up with a really cool dynamic. So first of all, the 3 lines that are going this way are going to help you map out where your eyes and features are going to be in the front and where your ear is going to go. Your ear goes behind that 3rd line, or that 2nd line, in that 3rd area. Now, the divisions that happen going up and down, this is going to be where most of your facial features are going to be, right? This is going to mean that your eyebrow, if this is your nose line, this is the middle of your face. So this is where your nose is going to go. This area has to be where my eyebrows and my eyes go. Okay. My ear is already in that same pattern. It's already curving in the way that I need it, like perspective-wise. So now I just round out the top part, find whatever shape I want for my head, and then draw my mouth in this front part and connect the elements. And you end up with a face. So that's a very strong way to visualize the face, taking into consideration your basic perspective, right? So we went from this to this to this by just understanding the rule of thirds. So now, understanding these concepts, let's apply that to a more complicated face. Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to find my middle line for the side of my face. So that's going to split my front and my back. I'm going to find my middle line for the front of my face. It's just going to continue throughout this whole shape. And for this one, I'm going to split it into 3s. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and then top and bottom. How big of a forehead do I want to give them? So I start with the eyebrows. And this line is my eyebrow line. So I start with that one because it gives me the better spacing for the top of my head. And then the bottom one is going to be where your nose canal comes from. So in your skull, you have this little thing, right? This little hole that tells you where your nose is going to come out from. That is what you're measuring to. You're not measuring to the actual nose shape. You're measuring to the base of the nose, right? So if we have that, our cheekbone and stuff like that can be later added, but we have a lot of information just from this. My nose has to come from here and has to connect back here. It can be in any way, shape, or form I want. It just has to connect back there, right? It can be perky, it could be small, it could be big, it could be large. As long as it connects back there, it should be fine. Now this part, from the nose down to my chin, which I'm going to consider that my chin, can be broken down again into another basic shape, which is a little bit rounder, right? In this case, this is where the mouth is going to go. So my mouth is going to reach from this side, which is roughly about halfway where my eye is. It's going to be right there. It's going to go all the way to the other side to the same muscle structure because this is my cheekbone, right? So it has to go back around. Again, it's going around my face and it's connecting up here at the other cheekbone line, going around. I'm drawing through my shape. So I just have to connect the bottom line to that. Depending on how big I want it open, it creates a little pocket for my teeth, This is going to be my chin. It's going to have a little bit of depth. This is going to be my cheek line that connects to my chin. And then this side, You don't see this cheek line because it's behind this, but you would see the middle part of my nose where it connects. So our noses have this little piece of cartilage on the bottom, right? That little piece of cartilage tends to create a little pocket that connects to your lips. But you're also, the edges of your nose tend to connect to where your mouth ends. Okay, so this gap right here is not necessarily flat. This has depth. This has, like, it's more so akin of a cup on top of your mouth than not, right? It has curvature. It's not just a flat section. It's the top of your lip that curves around your... my arm got numb. Numb arm. Numb arm emergency. Okay. So as we take that same notion, again, my eyebrows are going to connect to my nose bridge, which is already there, right? This middle part is already there, my midline. So I already know where my nose bridge is going to be. My eyebrow wraps around my head. That's why it has a little curve. My eyes are going to be closer to my eyebrows than they are the bottom of my face. So if you draw your mask or whatever you decide to draw, if you have your eyebrows up here, your eyes don't fall in the middle. Your eyeball itself is going to be really close to your eyebrows. But it depends on how much eyelid you give yourself. That's going to give you that distance. Okay? So that distance is created by your eyelid, but your eyeball is really close to your actual eyebrows. So let's draw our eyeball. From there, I get to choose the hemispheres that are going to consist of my eyeball. Right? In this case, we're looking at it from a little bit from underneath, so this bottom eyelid would not have much depth. It would just wrap around a little bit underneath the eyeball. But this top eyeball would have a little bit of depth to my eyelids on the top. Right? My eyelid itself would have a little bit of depth. So I would draw that in my drawing, going around my sphere, creating my depth. Same thing for this one. Most of the time it's just darkened out, but and then I can draw my eyeball looking anywhere. The curvature from here will lead to where my hairline is as well, if it has a hairline. My ear would go after the second line, connected to where the guideline of my nose and my eyebrows are. And then my sideburns and stuff like that would not cross the first line. And just like that, you have everything you need for a character or for a face just from that knowledge of those three little points without really understanding any perspective or taking anything into account, right? And when you go fast, it's a lot easier because all you got to do is really map out these three features and divide everything into 3 and 2. For the side, you only really need that whenever you need to find out where the ear is supposed to go. Other than that, it's really simple for you to just not even worry where the features are going to go because you already know they're supposed to fit within those areas. And then you can just focus much more on creating cooler designs, more structure, more anatomy, more storytelling and things like that because it just becomes easier to map everything out. Right? And you can go into doing hats and stuff like that by just drawing your shape around instead of on top. So a lot of things become a lot easier when it comes down to drawing different designs like this. So it's a technique that I like to explain to people especially people that are starting, so they feel more encouraged to sit down and draw characters and try to map out the features, right? Right? If I told you that all you needed to do to draw really cool characters was split this in half like this, like a tic-tac-toe, and draw all your features within this little section, would you tell me that I'm crazy? No, you'd probably be like, oh, that doesn't look right. But it does. Right? Tic-tac-toe. Add the hair on top. It's very simple to conceptualize this, right? It's very easy to make a tic-tac-toe with different holes and then see, maybe you just want the eyes to be bigger. So the eyes can be bigger by making that part bigger. But you don't have to make everything else unproportioned, right? You can change styles incredibly simple by just simply changing the lines in which those are rendered. And you can use that to come up with your initial designs and then see how that same line work, like turnarounds are going to be stupidly easy for you. Like, because once you come up with your line work for this, guess what? You already have your line work for your front. All you got to do is draw it thinner. You already have it mapped out. It's essentially just a grid mark. Make this guy's chin a little bit bigger. Right? Things like turnarounds become a lot easier when you can just map them out. It's not 100% accurate, but you guys get the idea. Who's mad? Someone's mad that they're learning? Oh no! Oh, how dare I teach people? Oh, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that you are learning things. Oh, even if you see me draw something bad, guess what? You're still learning how not to draw something. Oh, in your face. You got taught regardless. What? Ooh, teaching burn. Ooh, ooh. Yeah, this is like something that you guys can take and you guys can benefit from. And then as you guys learn how to apply more and more anatomy, like you guys will just be masters at drawing really cool things. Right? It's not going to be like super hard for you to come up with different things. What are pinups? Pinups are essentially like what I like the consideration of a pinup is a girl or a dude in a very cute, sexy pose, right? Doing something or some sort of action. In my opinion, every pinup looks so much cuter when you combine them with like a situation where they're in an awkward state, or you combine them with a little cute animal. Right? If you combine them with a little cute animal, that tends to always just be a more appealing concept than not. So that is the essence for a pinup, in my opinion, and then making that into a nice, cool little design tends to make it even more so like appealing. Right? So that is essentially what a pinup is. It could be a guy, it could be a girl, it could be animals, it could be, I don't know, it could be whatever you guys want, but it has like the essence of it making like an appealing character. Just that's the essence of a pinup. All right, what time is it? Oh my god, we're almost done with this sketchbook. We only have like what, 6 more pages? Not even that. 5 more pages. 5 more. We could finish this sketchbook today if you wanted to. But unfortunately, I gotta go play pool. Well, not unfortunately. I like playing pool, but it's yeah. Yeah. Even things more complicated like this guy, they're all based on the same concept. Right? It's exactly the same concept. It's just applied a little bit different with a little bit more of a anatomically correctness. But yeah, like this feature is incredibly important. Especially just learning the placement of your elements on your face to match the style that you want, you know? Like this doesn't have to retain to this sort of styling with the big crazy eyes and, you know, like the long features for the face. Like very easily you could just change that to something different, like something that has a bigger bottom than the top, right? And just like that, you have a completely different styling to your designs. You don't have to stay within the parameters that I'm establishing for my designs. Those are just the way that I like it. Some other people might like them in different positions, in different styles and stuff, right? It can be whatever you decide you want it to be. This is just a placement lesson. Cool. All right, what time is it? More doodles of legs. Feet are easy. Feet are very easy. Oh, feet are so easy. No, yeah, feet. Feet are such a hard pain in the ass until you realize they're a super simple shape. It's literally this shape. That's a foot. From there, you can add depth by giving it a bottom, a top, whatever you feel like. But in its core, it's that shape. It's just that. Think about it like that. When you're drawing legs, if you think about them like bell bottoms, it's going to be really easy for you to draw legs. Complicated ones, simple ones, ones with shoes. You're going to find it incredibly easy to be able to draw your character's feet super dynamically if you just think about them as simple shapes. Even animals. Okay, we are almost fulfilled here. Velociraptor. Okay, let's see. Anything else that I can touch upon? Nobody cares. What? What's going on here? What about the knee? I have no idea what's going on. I want to know. I can't draw shoes. What is someone saying? I love trolls, Dewey. Yeah, whatever, I don't care. Okay, let's draw the knee. Let's just fill up the rest of the pages, though. Let's find space to draw stuff in. All right. Let's fill this out as much as we can. So the knee, huh? I really don't leave much space, do I? All right. We can do some knees right here. Okay, so the knee is going to be a part of the leg, right? That's right here. The knee can be combined with your upper thigh. Your knee can really be combined to your upper thigh about 99% of the time. And it's going to look right. What I like about not having to worry about drawing the knee by just drawing everything in one section is that I don't have to worry about the little bumps and stuff like that that normally come along with it. I just know that it's supposed to be right there. Right? So I draw my big major shape, my other major shape that's getting overlapped by that one, and I have a pretty good leg. So I don't even have to worry about the kneecap most of the time. I just need to understand that that's where the leg pivots from. So if my leg is coming out like this, right? All I need to know is that my leg pivots from that point. I don't need to draw the kneecap. I don't need to draw anything. I just need to know that my leg pivots from that point, because then that means that I know where the bone underneath is going to pivot to. And that is going to tell me where my bone and my muscle is wrapping around so that it creates the depth that I need. Okay, so that is essentially how I draw knees, that I don't focus on the actual kneecap because it's, I don't know, unless I'm trying to draw something incredibly realistic, right? And then I would have to worry about like the muscle structures and the tendons that go into the kneecap, and then the little piece of skin and tendons and ligaments that wrap around the body, right? I don't need to draw all that because I'm not going to be drawing superhero characters or like things that detailed. Even superhero characters, in my opinion, don't even need that, right? Just need to know how to draw this upper lower body shape. That's all you really need to know. Okay, so yeah, tattoo it on your arm. Tattoo what on your arm? You can tattoo like cool things like where your fingers are, right? Remember that measurement that I taught you guys? How the top and the bottom of your finger is the same, but you have an extra ligament right here. So that section is the same as these two combined. Ta-da! That's a good measurement. I could get that tattooed on me. That'd look cool. Oh yeah, your knuckle is also the size of your hand. So your knuckle is roughly the size of your hand, right? That's where your fingers bend from. So if you have a hand, you have your knuckle, your fingers bend from that top point, right? Regardless of how you draw them, they're gonna bend from that point. So that's another tip that I like to give people. But I think I am done. I think I have provided enough information for you guys tonight. Between both streams, we had like almost 100,000 people liking my stuff. So I think that's a good enough indicator for today. We can let that be. We learned a lot. We learned about arms, we learned about noses, we learned about position and bodies. We learned about how to see the face and how to see the mask structure. We've learned about hair recently and how to draw faces, very cool. And just recently, we have been experimenting a lot more about how to actually map out the face so it makes a little bit more sense for each one of us. And it's helping me a lot too. So understanding where things go, know where your body parts come from, and then style is whatever you decide to draw things for it. That's going to be based on your styling, whatever level of a knowledge of anatomy you have and perspective. But this is a fantastic way to start your drawings, period. Bow. All right. With that being said, I have books for sale. You guys can go buy them. You guys can go support me, subscribe, and all that stuff if you guys feel inclined to help the cause. All the money goes to bettering my equipment and paying my rent. So if you guys feel inclined to help me be able to do this full time without having to take any more freelance work on the side, feel free to donate, subscribe, and sign up to all my channels. That helps me and it helps you. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day. You guys enjoy your Sunday, and I'm going to go play pool and ride my motorcycle. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.